You've probably heard about light workers, about ascension and love and raising your vibration. But what no one tells you what they actively hide is that some of us were never meant to just chase the light. Some of us were chosen for the dark. Not because we're evil, not because we're broken, but because the universe needed warriors who could walk through what others run from. Souls who could stand in the center of chaos and not be consumed but transformed. This is the path of the dark chosen one, and it isn't for everyone. But if you're here, listening, it might just be for you. They told you to be positive, to be kind, to stay humble. They told you to forgive fast, let go easily, and shine brightly. But what if you weren't born to be soft? What if your soul carries a frequency so ancient, so untamed, that the world had to domesticate you just to survive your presence? What if the darkness you faced wasn't a punishment but a training ground? You see, the dark chosen ones are forged in fire. We don't awaken through comfort, we awaken through confrontation. We don't ascend by escaping the shadow, we become it, we own it, we master it. The first power you gain on this path is the power of the mirror. Unlike others who seek validation, the dark chosen one becomes a mirror to the world's hidden truths. You reflect back to people what they don't want to see in themselves, their insecurities, their lies, their unhealed wounds, and they will hate you for it. They will project, dismiss, gossip. But deep down they'll never forget you, because your presence activates something. You shake souls. You don't entertain illusions. You pierce right through them. This power is both a curse and a gift. It makes you lonely at times, misunderstood, but it also makes you undeniable. You don't need to speak, your energy speaks for you. Have you ever walked into a room and felt the air change? That's not ego, that's frequency, and not everyone can handle it. The second shadow power is radical discernment. The dark chosen one cannot be lied to for long. We see through masks, way feel eye than engines. We may play dumb, but deep down we're always watching, always sensing. This is more than intuition, it's a psychic filtration system. You can feel the dissonance in someone's voice, the falseness in their compliments, the void in their energy. This kind of discernment doesn't make life easier, it makes it realer. You can't unsee the truth once you've seen it, and that means you'll outgrow people fast. You'll walk away from connections that feel fine but aren't true. You'll burn bridges with grace and not look back, because you weren't made to stay small just to fit in. You were made to walk alone if necessary, but never walk inauthentically.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
You begin to realize that isolation is not a punishment, it's a purification. You stop craving crowds and start craving clarity. You stop needing approval and start needing alignment. And that's when the third power begins to awaken, the power of Shadow Alchemy. This is the ability to take your deepest wounds and turn them into weapons of wisdom. You don't just heal, you transmute. You feel it all, the rage, the betrayal, the abandonment, and you don't run. You sit with it, you scream through it. You breathe into it until it gives you its secrets. Then you rise, not softer but sharper, not sweeter but truer. This is not the healing of pastel-colored journals and bubble baths. This is the healing of blood and fire and truth. You earn your peace, and that peace, it's unshakable. Because it wasn't given to you, it was forged. But the world is afraid of this kind of power. It prefers the comfortable, the palatable, the easy. That's why it fears the dark chosen ones, because we don't play by its rules. We don't fake smiles. We don't water ourselves down. We don't pretend we don't see what we see. And that leads us to the fourth power, energetic sovereignty. You stop leaking energy. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop giving your light to those who only want to dim it. You realize that your energy is currency, and not everyone can afford you. So you become more intentional. Every word, every step, every connection becomes sacred. You are no longer available for shallow interactions. You are no longer available for anything that doesn't resonate. And it's not about superiority, it's about clarity. You finally know who you are. You finally understand what you carry. And that knowing, it becomes your shield. You walk through the world with your head high, not because you think you're better, but because you're done pretending you're not powerful. You don't need to prove your value. Your presence does that for you. But to hold this level of truth, you must walk through the fire of death and rebirth over and over. You must grieve the versions of you that were palatable, tame, because the real you isn't here to be liked. The real you is here to awaken others by being fully alive. So let me ask you something that most won't dare to ask. What parts of you have you buried to make others comfortable? What gifts have you shamed because they didn't make sense to the world? And what would really happen if you stopped hiding? If you stopped apologizing for your fire? If you allowed your darkness to not just exist, but to lead? Because here's the truth. The dark chosen ones are not accidents. We were born with contracts embedded in our souls. Contracts to disrupt, to dismantle, to destroy illusion. We are not here to be loved by them all. We are here to remind the few who are ready to remember their power, their truth, their shadow gifts. And that's only the beginning. There are still powers we haven't spoken of. Forces that awaken only when you surrender to your own depth, when you stop seeking the light outside and start becoming the light within the dark. These are not metaphors. These are invitations. But only a few will say yes. The journey of a dark chosen one never begins in the light. It starts in the womb of discomfort, in the silence of exile, in the unrelenting furnace of inner collapse. You don't gain these unseen shadow powers by reading books or meditating in a field of flowers. You earn them the moment life rips everything away from you, your safety, your identity, your illusions, and leaves you alone with nothing but the echo of your own breath. It is there, in the void, that the real transformation begins, not because you chose it, but because your soul contracted for it before you were born. That contract said, "I will descend so I may rise not just for myself, but for the world." The fifth shadow power, the first of the three that only awaken through pain, is the power of inner resurrection. This is not just about surviving hard times. This is about dying to who you thought you were. The ego will fight you. It will scream as the old identities burn. The one who needed to be right, the one who needed to be seen a certain way, they all die screaming. And when they do, there's a moment of terrifying silence. You look in the mirror and you don't recognize yourself anymore. That's when most people retreat. They reach for distractions, cling to old patterns, or numb themselves back to sleep. But not us. Not the dark chosen ones. We stay in the fire. We let the death complete. We let ourselves fall apart completely, because we know what dies is not the soul, it's the shell. And what's born in its place is not a better version of who we were. It is someone entirely new, someone remembered. This resurrection gives you a power that cannot be faked or borrowed. You begin to carry a stillness within you, a knowing. You've already survived your own obliteration. What could the world possibly do to you now? You move through life with a quiet certainty. You don't need to prove your worth. You've seen your worth in the darkness. You've held your broken pieces in your own trembling hands and chose to love them anyway. That kind of power doesn't need attention. It commands respect without asking for it. The sixth shadow power is one that only isolation can give you, the power of energetic command. When you've sat alone for long enough, truly alone, not just in solitude but in soul estrangement, you begin to hear reality in ways others cannot. You start noticing the spaces between words, the energy behind intentions, the unseen threads connecting events. You no longer guess what's happening, you feel it. You don't just read energy, you start to influence it. Not by force, but by alignment. Your presence alone begins to shift rooms. You speak less, but what you say lands like thunder. You touch people without touching them. You begin to understand that energy isn't something you use, it's something you are. And when you master your own, you begin to move through the world like a storm in human skin. But this power only comes after you've endured the ache of emptiness, after you've longed for connection and received none, after you've cried into pillows and screamed into the void and begged the universe to send anyone who sees you. And when no one comes, when you're left in that silence again and again, you stop waiting, you stop begging. You remember that you were never sent here to be filled by others, you were sent here to overflow. And from that moment forward, you walk differently. Your energy is no longer leaking. It is no longer seeking. It is sovereign. The final and seventh shadow power is the most sacred. It is the power of sacred destruction. You become a vessel of divine demolition. You no longer fear breaking things, relationships, systems, illusions, because you finally understand that some things must die for truth to live. You stop trying to fix what was never meant to be healed. You stop clinging to jobs, to titles, to roles that no longer reflect your essence. You become an agent of necessary endings. And yes, this makes you dangerous to lies, to manipulation, to spiritual bypassing. But it also makes you free. You are no longer afraid of walking away. You are no longer afraid of being misunderstood. You are no longer afraid of starting over, because you've done it before. And you'll do it again if the truth requires it. What people don't understand is that this destruction is not rooted in ego, it's rooted in sacred purpose. When you burn the bridge, it's not out of hate, it's out of clarity. When you say no, it's not rebellion, it's alignment. When you walk away, it's not abandonment, it's liberation. And yes, people will call you cold, cruel, heartless, but deep down they'll feel something else: respect. Because you did what they couldn't. You chose truth over comfort. You chose your path over their approval. So now let me ask you something most won't dare to ask. What are you still holding on to that no longer holds you? What needs to end, not because it's bad, but because your soul has outgrown it? And are you brave enough to destroy what no longer serves, even if it's everything you once prayed for? That's the final test. That's the choice that separates those who talk about awakening from those who embody it. These three shadow powers, resurrection, command, destruction, are not for the faint of heart. They are not glamorous. They will cost you everything that is not real. But what you gain is everything that is. You become untouchable not because you are immune to pain, but because you are intimate with it. You don't fear the dark anymore. You are the dark. And that's where your true light begins, not above, but within. There comes a point on the path of the dark chosen one when the fight ends, not because you've won, but because you've surrendered to something deeper. Not the kind of surrender that means giving up, but the kind that means giving in. Giving in to the truth that you are not here to cleanse yourself of the dark, you are here to become it consciously. To stop resisting the parts of yourself you were taught to fear. To stop judging the parts that don't look spiritual enough. To stop trying to transcend what you are meant to embody. This is the final gate. The moment when you no longer see your darkness as a problem, but as your pathway to power. Most people spend their entire lives caught in a war within themselves. A war between who they are and who they were told they should be. Between the voice of their soul and the voice of their shame. Between the truth they feel and the mask they wear. But when you become the dark consciously, the war ends. You no longer deny your rage, you honor it. You don't suppress your desire, you channel it. You don't exile your wounds, you sit with them until they speak. This doesn't make you chaotic. It makes you whole. Because wholeness isn't about being good. It's about being real. When you become your darkness, you begin to move in a world that no longer controls you. The opinions of others lose their grip. The systems that once dictated your worth begin to collapse in your presence. You no longer react, you respond. You no longer seek power, you are power. But this level of embodiment only comes when you stop running. When you look at your shame, your anger, your fear, and instead of fixing them, you listen. You say, "What do you want me to know?" And for the first time, they speak not as enemies, but as teachers. You begin to realize that everything you were taught to hide is actually a portal. Your jealousy reveals your unclaimed potential. Your grief reveals your capacity to love. Your rage reveals your boundaries and your truth. These are not defects, they're sacred messages. But you can only hear them when you stop trying to be spiritual in the way the world has defined it. Because real spirituality isn't sterile. It isn't sanitized. It's messy. It's primal. It's alive. And you, as a dark chosen one, were never meant to be clean-cut and polished. You were meant to be elemental. You were meant to walk through fire and rise with ashes still on your skin. And here's the paradox. The moment you embrace your darkness fully, you become lighter. Not because you've replaced your shadow with light, but because you've integrated it. You are no longer fragmented. You are no longer leaking energy trying to hide parts of yourself. You are no longer exhausted by the performance. You are home. And when you are home within yourself, nothing can move you. Not rejection. Not loss. Not chaos. Because you've touched the void within and you've come back stronger. This is where your presence becomes magnetic. Not because you're trying to be anything but because you are everything. You become the paradox, the storm and the silence, the flame and the stillness. People feel it. They don't understand it, but they feel it. They feel you. And that's the moment you stop chasing anything because everything begins to move toward you. Not because you manifested it, but because you became the version of yourself that no longer needs to chase. You became the source, not the seeker. So let me ask you now, if you stopped resisting your darkness, what would be possible for you? If you stopped trying to fix yourself and instead started trusting yourself, what would shift? What would awaken in you if you finally said, "I don't need to heal to be worthy. I already am. And my darkness is not the doorway to shame, it's the doorway to sovereignty"? You see, the final gate isn't a ritual. It isn't a ceremony. It's a choice. A decision to stop apologizing for your depth. A decision to stop playing small in the name of being good. A decision to say, "I'm here, and I'm not here to be liked, I'm here to be real." And in that realness, you stop being manipulated. You stop being drained. You stop betraying yourself for belonging. Because once you belong to your darkness, you never need to beg for belonging again. And yes, it's scary. Because no one told you this was allowed. No one told you that your darkness could be holy, that your triggers could be teachers, that your shadow could be sacred. But it is. And you are. And this is the moment you finally remember. You are not here to be perfect. You are here to be powerful. You are not here to escape the world. You are here to change it. And you cannot change anything you're still afraid of. So become it. Become what you feared. Become what they told you to hide. And watch as the world begins to bend around your truth, not because you forced it, but because you embodied it. There is a mystery hidden beneath all your losses, deeper than the heartbreaks, the betrayals, the failures, the nights when you screamed into silence and no one came. It's the kind of mystery that doesn't make sense when you're in it. When everything's falling apart, you think you're being punished. You think life is rejecting you. But the truth is far more sacred and far more terrifying. You are being initiated, and the universe, silent as it may seem, is watching closely. Because only the ones who've lost everything are ready to receive the dark gift. You see, the universe doesn't hand out its deepest codes to just anyone. It doesn't trust the ones still addicted to comfort, still clinging to illusions, still begging to be saved. No, it waits. It waits for the ones who have been emptied. The ones who have nothing left to protect. The ones who have burned through their identities, their masks, their attachments, and still chose to rise. Not because they were sure of anything, but because something inside them refused to die. This is where the real power begins. Not when you gain something, but when you lose everything you thought you needed and realize you're still here. Not when you are validated by the world, but when the world ignores you and you choose to validate yourself anyway. When you stop asking for signs and start becoming the sign. That's when the universe leans in closer. That's when the ancient codes, the hidden truths, the soul technologies locked in your DNA begin to reactivate, because they were never meant for your ego. They were meant for your emptiness. And that's why we say, the dark gift is only given to those who've died while still breathing. What is the dark gift? It's not a power you can flaunt. It's not something you can sell, teach, or even fully explain. It's a presence, a resonance, a frequency that can only be earned through embodiment. It's the ability to see what others miss, to feel what others deny, to hold space for truth so intense that others flinch at its touch. The dark gift gives you access to the hidden architecture of reality. You begin to see the threads behind events, the truth behind people's words, the energy behind their actions. You become a seer not because you studied, but because you surrendered. You become a healer not because you learned the right techniques, but because you died enough times to be empty enough for the divine to move through you. You don't even need to speak. You walk into a room and people feel it. Something in them shifts, not because you're trying to impress, but because your very presence disrupts what is false. This is why your path has been so brutal. This is why you've been isolated, broken, stripped bare. Because the universe was preparing you to carry something no one else could. And now, finally, you're ready. But here's the secret twist. The dark gift is not for you. It's not for your ego. It's not for your success. It's for the collective. You were chosen not to escape the world, but to serve it. Not to preach from a pedestal, but to walk among the broken and remind them of their own power. To show them by your living example that wholeness is not about perfection, it's about integration. You are the bridge between the seen and the unseen, between the light and the void. And that's why your very existence is medicine. So let me ask you now, what if all the pain, all the loss, all the silence was never meant to break you, but to break you open? What if you were never cursed, but carved into who you needed to become? And what if the life you thought you wanted was never the point at all? The real reward is not what you get. It's who you become. The one who no longer fears the dark. The one who walks with it. The one who carries the torch, not to light the world, but to show others how to ignite their own fire. You are not like them. You never were. And now you don't have to pretend anymore. Stand up. You've been chosen by the dark not to be destroyed, but to awaken. You are the storm they tried to silence. You are the void they tried to fill. You are the secret the universe has been waiting to reveal. And now it begins.